All right, welcome. Today we're going to tackle something that might sound a little weird. We're talking about the challenges of A-book execution, and specifically a really surprising problem that brokers can run into.
So let me ask you this, and think about it for a second. Can your broker actually lose money when you win a trade? I mean, it sounds totally backward, right? Their whole job is to make a little something off your trading, whether you win or lose. But believe it or not, the answer is a big, surprising yes.
And this is what we're calling the broker's profit puzzle. We're going to break down exactly how a certain type of broker can end up in the red, even when their client is celebrating a big win.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we first need to understand who we're talking about, and that's the A-book broker. The easiest way to think about them is like a bridge. You know, when you place a trade with them, they're not taking the other side of your bet. Nope, they just pass it straight along to a bigger fish, what we call a liquidity provider or LP. They're just the go-between, the middleman.
Ideally, their business model is super simple. They make their money from something called the markup, a tiny little slice of profit on the difference between the price they get from their LP and the price they give you. That's how they pay the bills. But what happens when that simple model gets flipped completely on its head?
All right, let's become financial detectives for a minute. We're going to dissect the anatomy of a losing trade. We'll follow a step-by-step example to see exactly how this whole thing goes south for the broker. So, it all kicks off with our trader. We'll call her Elsa. She's feeling good about the Aussie dollar, so she opens a buy order for 1 million units of AUD/USD. The price she gets is 0.7500. So far, so good. Pretty standard stuff. Okay, now here's where the A-book model kicks in. The broker doesn't want to hold on to that risk themselves, so what do? They immediately turn around and hedge that trade. They place the exact same buy order with their liquidity provider. But, and you got to pay attention here because this is the most important part, they have to buy it from their LP at a slightly worse price, 0.7502.
And right here, this is where the trouble starts. Just look at the numbers. The broker sold to Elsa at 0.7500, but then they had to go and buy it from their own supplier for more at 0.7502. They are literally underwater from the get-go. This is what's called a negative markup, and it is the exact opposite of how they're supposed to make a living.
Okay, let's keep the story going. The market does exactly what Elsa hoped it would. It goes up. Her trade is looking great, she's in the money, and she decides, you know what, it's time to take my profit.
So, she closes out. That means she sells her 1 million AUD/USD back to the broker, locking in a sweet, profitable price of 0.7550. From Elsa's perspective, this trade was a total win. Of course, the broker has to follow suit. They have to close their hedge position by selling to their liquidity provider. But guess what? The problem happens all over again. The best price they can get from their LP is 0.7548. And this just makes the hole they're in even deeper. Check it out. They had to buy the position back from Elsa at 0.7550, but they could only sell it to their own provider for 0.7548. So they lost a little bit of money when the trade opened, and now they've lost even more money when it closed. Why? Because both times they gave their customer a better price than they got themselves.
So what's the final score here? When you do the math, adding up that little loss at the beginning and the other little loss at the end, the broker's total P&L on this trade is a loss of $400. Their client won, and they literally paid for it.
I know, all these decimal points can make your head spin. So let's just forget about Forex for a second and use a really simple analogy to make this whole thing click. Think about it like this. No business on earth, I don't care what you sell, can survive if it's always buying its inventory for more than it sells it for. It's just business 101. Our broker, in this case, was basically running a grocery store where they bought a loaf of bread for $5 and then sold it to every customer for $4. You do that over and over and over again, and, well, this is what happens. You're out of business. The way it's supposed to work is just plain common sense, right? You buy your bread from the supplier for $4, you sell it to your customer for $5, and boom, you make a $1 profit. It's this simple, fundamental logic that our broker in the example totally missed. So this whole story, this entire puzzle really boils down to one single undeniable rule. This is the broker's golden rule, the one thing they have to get right to stay afloat. And here it is, it's this simple. To be profitable, the price a broker gets from their liquidity provider must be better than the price they quote to their customer. Period.
has to be better on the way in, and it has to be better on the way out. It's the only way you create that positive markup and, actually have a business that makes money.
And, it all comes back to that great quote from Henry Ford: "Nothing is particularly hard if you divide it into small jobs." This whole thing seems super complicated at first, right? But when you break it down, you look at the entry, you look at the hedge, the exit, it all makes perfect sense. So hopefully the next time you hit that buy or sell button, you'll have a whole new appreciation for the crazy mechanics working behind the scenes.